Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius. I am John Ledyard from pewterreport.com, along with the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, back from the great north. He is Matthew Matera. What's up, man?
What is up, everyone? I'm so happy to be back. I'm pumped to talk Bucs football. It's right around the corner. It's coming up this Sunday. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. It is. It's that time. We got 5 days until training camp. The Super Bowl champions are going to be in Tampa Bay. Matt's back in Tampa Bay. I won't be in Tampa Bay until August 2nd, but I'm geeked for it, man. It's going to be an awesome season, and I can't wait to get it started.
I think it helped today, too, that they were at the White House. Everyone was celebrating, reliving the Super Bowl championship that they won.
Ring ceremonies in 2 days, right?
What's up?
Ring ceremony, is that in 2 days?
Yeah, that's coming up soon. And, you know, the president referred to Tampa as making a strong case for Tampa Bay or Titletown. So all great things, man. All really exciting things.
It is. And you know what else is a really exciting thing? Celsius Peach Vibe, rocking it out. Love it. Got the peach vibe. I did. I got some when I was in Pennsylvania, man, and it is helping. It is sustaining. You got the blueberry pomegranate.
That's probably my favorite, honestly. Yeah. Maybe the orange. The orange is like the original, the OG, but I do love the blueberry pomegranate.
Yeah, I like the orange. I like the orange sickle. I love the peach vibe though, man. I keep coming back to that one. And the tropical vibe too, the newer one, is really, really good too. So for people who don't know, Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy, the best energy drink out there. And they are now in the protein bar market as well. Fast protein bars, white chocolate, cookies and cream. This one is unbelievable. They also have a caramel one, salted caramel, that is, might be my favorite actually out of all of them. You can get this variety pack. There's a link in the YouTube description. You can get this variety pack and get this flavor, the white chocolate cookies and cream, and the caramel one together in a box. You can just follow that, click on that link. You can get those ordered. It's really, really good stuff. You don't want to miss out on that, because I think those protein bars are the best tasting protein bars I've ever had. They are just game changer to me in that way. So get your Celsius energy drinks as you always do, but also check out those fast protein bars, 20 grams of protein. Hard to get protein without the sugar. These bars give you that, just 1 gram of sugar in each bar and 20 grams of protein. So it is game changer stuff. Check that out. Celsius doing big things to change the game as always. Speaking of changing the game, Matt, we're here to talk about O-line, D-line, camp battles for the Bucs. What battles, right? It's all set in stone, right? There's not going to be any surprises.
Very late in the depth chart, there's going to be some good battles. But
right.
That doesn't mean that they're not important, because depth is key, and we learned that last season. So, you know, I think it's great that you can kind of come into this training camp with a little sense of ease, like, okay, we know who's going to be starting here and there on both sides of the ball, on the offensive and defensive line. But who doesn't love competition? So there's going to be some fun things that you could pay attention to as a Bucs fan that you could see on pewterreport.com. We'll be paying attention to all of those intricacies and little battles that we'll see. But for the starters themselves, yeah, it's kind of down pat. Would you say not?
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think we'll have to kind of dive into some of those deeper camp battles, as we always do on this show anyway. But first, want to get to a couple of questions and comments we've got from people to kick things off. Richard references Tom Brady poking some fun today during the White House visit. 40% of the people don't believe the Bucs won, to which Joe Biden responded, I understand that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty had me rolling. I'm not going to lie. I said that to my wife. She was rolling as well. That was pretty funny. There were a couple good moments from today's White House visit for sure. So it's been some fun stuff.
Brady brought up the forgetting what down it was in the Thursday night game against the Bears. So that was funny. You know, he's able to poke a little fun of himself. I think the best quote of the whole thing, it happened early on. It was Donovan Smith. He was on his Instagram, one of his stories, and he turned to Tom. He said, "Oh, you have residency here, don't you?" Because Brady just wins so many Super Bowls. He's been invited so many times. Right. But then other people pointed out too, it's quite interesting that Brady went to the 2 initial Super Bowls that he won, but then he didn't go the next 2 times, and then the Patriots didn't go in 2019. So he's been invited a bunch, but he actually has only been there 2 or 3 times, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, Donovan Smith had a great quote there. Devin White was pretty much giving a whole tour of the entire White House. He's like, this is the red room. This is this room. He's looking at like different presidents and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely check out all the content going on there.
Yeah, some good stuff. And Donovan Smith and Bradley Pinion, who were on the Team Social Justice Initiative,
yes.
They were able to meet with Vice President to talk about voting rights and things like that. So even in the midst of that visit, good things happening and those guys trying to move the needle for change. And
absolutely.
I can't say it enough. Having been covered other teams, I'm not even like a Bucs biased Bucs fan type of person, like as you know, but I just can't get over this team. I think just has a lot of the right type of people on it. And so it has been a lot of fun to cover them for that reason. Some good things were brought up today too. Some interesting things, I should say. I don't know if they're good or not yet, but Alex Guerrero, Tom Brady's trainer, and obviously one of his best friends, went on Adam Schefter's podcast. And I thought this was really interesting. He talked a lot about Brady. It's a fun show. Listen to the Adam Schefter podcast and you can check it out. But one of the things that was interesting was Schefter asked him point blank, Schefter was like, from what I'm hearing, a lot of members of the Bucs, or maybe most members of the Bucs, I forget exactly how he phrased it, didn't even know that Brady had an injury, that his knee was injured or that it was torn MCL or anything like that. And he's like, is that true? And Alex Guerrero responded, that is correct. And then he said, but you knew. And Guerrero said, yes. So Guerrero made it clear that he knew and that they knew from the beginning of the season that he was going to have to have surgery on at the end of the year. It's unclear to me, at this time, why Brady didn't just get that surgery after this last season with the Patriots. I wonder if it had something to do with free agency and not wanting to be like laid up necessarily, or maybe less marketable at his age if he had surgery right then. I don't know. I'm not sure what it would have been if the news got out. Maybe he didn't think everybody would have had the interest in him as a free agent. I don't know. I don't know what that, but there's the other part of it is that do we believe this, that the Bucs didn't know? I have a hard time thinking how he could have got past the team physical.
Yeah, how could he possibly really, hoodwink someone or behoove them?
Like he came to them as a free agent. It's not like he was already on the team. I don't know how physicals work when you're already in the team, but I know as your free agent, you're getting a physical done before you're actually signed.
I agree with what you're saying. It's fair to say that, maybe he wouldn't want the news to get out before he signed with the team about surgery, because anyone's going to have their reservations about signing a player that just had knee surgery, especially a guy at 43, or I guess he was 42 at the time. But I guess it's a little different, though, when it's Tom Brady. Oh, it's the greatest player of all time. We got to get him on.
I don't think it would have changed anything from the Bucs' perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, too, also, Brady said this in an interview. I think it was after the Super Bowl, but he said he never likes to talk about injuries in the first place. He said everyone deals with their own injuries and their own personal, I don't want to say personal off the field troubles, but different things that happen to your body throughout the season, because they obviously put their bodies through so much in a football season. He said everyone deals with things differently and everyone is able to overcome different injuries in different ways. So I just think it's one of those things, even if he was signed to a team or whether this was with the Patriots or it only went down with the Bucs, I don't think it's something he really would have talked about, even if it was something very minor or very serious. He's just never really been that guy to discuss that part of his playing career.
It's just going to be interesting with the consequences that the Bucs could face for not disclosing that injury on the reports each week of the season. If they could face consequences for that, if the injury is provable, kind of at the end of the year, and they could. But how did the Bucs? I don't know if they're going to be able to plead ignorance and then get out of it. You know what I mean? Like that's their responsibility. I feel like to know, and to put it on the report. I think that could be how the league looks at it. Do I care personally? No, not really.
No,
obviously, the fact that you didn't play.
I think the Bucs would trade a fine for a medical thing for the Super Bowl championship they just got.
Sure.
I remember when Brady was on the Patriots, though. He would be on the injured list like every single week, and it'd be the smallest little injury, and it wouldn't matter. And everyone would complain, "Why is he on the injury list? He's like clearly not gonna miss a game or something like that." And now it's on the other side of things.
It's just interesting that Guerrero said that, because to me it seems very unlikely that they wouldn't have known at all. Now maybe I think Schefter technically asked them almost everybody or something like so. Maybe a couple people knew, but at that point, then the Bucs aren't off.
And Guerrero's technically a member of the staff, so
that also makes it tricky. How exactly does that work? Like, what is he required to disclose? So anyway, questions.
What if he caters just to Tom and I guess Gronk, because Gronk does the TB12 method, and what if he's only a TB12 player specialist? Is that
right? Is that Scotty Miller, we know, did a lot of that stuff. Is that kind of okay? Like now he's going to do what those guys. What about what the team needs to know? And I don't know. I'm not saying anything nefarious happened. I don't understand. There's a gray area for me here that I'm confused
It's a lot
about.
of legal jargon.
Yeah, we need to be able to ask these questions at one of the first Bucs media availabilities is kind of what my wonderings out loud say. Mitch Shimura says practice. Brady said practice tomorrow. Is that true? I think he meant maybe the rookies. Because
he mentioned that at the end. Well, he also said they were going to do 11 on 11 against the White House intern.
That's true.
I don't know. I don't think that's true either. Yeah, maybe he probably just meant that rookies are reporting because initially the rookies were supposed to report to camp today. And I was thinking, well, who's going to be there? Everyone is in Washington.
Yeah, they're already on their way back to Tampa, though, apparently. So,
yeah.
So, I don't know. Rookies. I think it's just rookies. And I think 24th is when players report. And then 25th, I think, is the first practice with everybody. So, man, that's so close, dude. It's the 20th today. It's awesome.
I know. I can't wait. Sunday.
Brian says
it's really going to be a Sunday fun day.
It is. It really is. Yes. And a lot of them coming after that, I think, for this Bucs season. Richard says, as athletic as Tristan Wirfs is, do you think there's a package where he lines up as a tight end and receives the ball? Let's maybe rope right back to this one. I just want to make sure we cover the Brady injury thing and any questions there. I think everybody's just kind of in speculation about where the facilities during COVID done at the Bucs facility. Yes, I believe that they still were for Brady. I think they still brought him there. Either way, the Bucs would have had access to knowledge of whatever the medical report was. So, yeah, I don't know. It's tricky to figure out right now. There's a lot of layers to this for sure. Let's get back to Richard's questions. As athletic as Tristan Wirfs is, do you think there is a package where he lines up as a tight end and receives the ball? Certainly could be a package like that. Feel like it would be a pretty obvious tip-off to the other team unless they found some way to
when he's not lined up in position. I do love the question, and the Bucs are no strangers to doing this. They obviously had Vita Vea line up 2 seasons ago, and he scored a touchdown against the Atlanta Falcons. I remember vividly because it was a road game in Atlanta, but I was at the game. And I'll never forget like the audible gasp that everyone had in the press box when Vita Vea scored.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in the Super Bowl, they did it as well with a play to Joe Haig. To Joe Haig. So it's definitely something the Bucs wouldn't rule out. But you already have Vita Vea as like the guy that would do that. Wirfs, I think, is very possible with all the things he could do, the backflips, the box jumps. He's clearly athletic enough to, get open on a goal line play. But like you said, it would be crazy. You wouldn't be able to disguise it at all with him. Like, oh, wait. What they'd
have to basically, as Paul's kind of suggesting here with this comment, they'd have to kind of set it up all season where they were consistently doing it, having Wirfs out there and not throwing
at that point, is it worth it for like one play? Would you just run it in with Rojo or Leonard Fournette at the 1 yard line?
Doesn't feel likely, but fun stuff to talk about. When speaking of the offensive line, we kind of feel like this is a group that's fairly set in stone going into the season. Top 5 are obviously set, no competition there. Josh Wells, Aaron Stinney, and Robert Hainsey all seem like locks, right? So you have 8. There's 8 right there. And how many do you think they keep? Probably 9?
Yeah, I wrote down like the whole depth chart and everything. And I was like, okay, well, there's 8 locks, and they're probably going to keep 9. That's what they've done in the past. That's what we always do with our Bucs battle plans and everything like that. So it's really just a competition between, let's see if I got all the names here, at least 5 different guys for essentially one spot.
Yeah, and it's tricky. Okay, so real quickly, I'll run through the names so everybody kind of knows. There's probably going to be 2 on the practice squad and 1 on the active roster from these names. You've got John Molshan, who was undrafted out of Boise State last year. We know the team liked him. He stuck around through everything last year. They kept him around, so he's a guy that they prioritize. They've been positive about. Donnell, he plays guard, and I think he could play maybe a little center. They're hoping. We'll see. Donnell Stanley has also worked at different positions. He is probably the longest of long shots out here. He and Nick Leverett probably the longest of long shots to make the roster. Perhaps a practice squad spot. We'll see. You've got Calvin Ashley, the tackle, who started out at Auburn, and actually kind of has a lot of the size traits that maybe some of the athleticism we're looking for. Technically, though, there's concerns. And does he have positional versatility, or is he just a tackle? Those will be all things that the Bucs are going to want to look at. And then probably the 2 favorites, maybe along with Molshan, maybe we say 3 favorites, is the guys that are most likely to win that last spot is Sedarius Hutchinson, the undrafted free agent from South Carolina that I predicted after the draft would win that 9th O-line spot. And Brad Seaton, the tackle who was on their roster and then opted out last season, was the Bucs' lone opt-out. He is back and intact, and Bruce Arians said positive things about him during minicamp, I believe it was. And so, yeah, we've got a situation where there's a lot of guys competing for one spot. It's a good problem to have because I think some of these guys can definitely play. But I personally think that Hainsey's versatility to play tackle if they needed him to, and Wells being a tackle, I think the emphasis is going to be on the guy inside and probably a guy who can snap. And I think Sedarius Hutchinson's got a great spot at winning that job.
Yeah, so you said versatility before, and I think that's the key with not just Robert Hainsey, who that is super important. That's the reason why they got him in the third round.
Yeah.
But any of these players that could be versatile for that ninth spot, who could play inside, who could play right guard, left guard. Because with Hainsey, they had him, and granted, it was rookie OTAs and the mandatory minicamp, but they had him taking snaps too. So if they have him as a backup center, all right, and you could lock in Stinney as one of the backup guards. And like you said, with Wells a tackle, do you want like another backup tackle? Do you want another interior guy? Because if Jensen goes down, last year they had the benefit until he had a career-ending injury. You had A.Q. Shipley, who's a standard center. He slid right in there like it was Jensen didn't get hurt, but they moved over Jensen when Marpet was out. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's why I think Hutchinson is such a valuable guy to see. I really like Molshin. I think there's a reason why they kept him around for so long, but we haven't seen enough to know if he could really. That's something I guess I'm gonna look at specifically is how much he'll move around in this training camp. If he's gonna go to guard or if he's just gonna play tackle. I think the versatility they have it there, and Hainsey is such a wild card because. The Bucs aren't going to reveal to us, oh, he's strictly going to be a center. Or, oh, we're going to use him as like the Joe Haig role, lining him next to the tackle or whatever. So he's a real wild card for this training camp. We know he's going to make the team, but how he's utilized and how that affects all the other guys going for that ninth spot is a real interesting storyline that will go on for definitely a couple of weeks at least.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's all about the versatility matters so much. You could have guys playing on pretty comparable levels, or maybe Seaton's playing better than Hutcherson, but at the end of the day, feel like they have enough tackles. They have 4 if they think Hainsey can play there, and they need another interior guy. A guy who could be an option there at multiple spots. And so Hutcherson wins the job, and Seaton doesn't. And so that could be what you're looking at as well. A lot of it also will depend on what they really think Hainsey is capable of. I really don't see Hainsey as a tackle. The Bucs have been adamant they see him as a 5-position guy. He obviously has more experience at tackle, having played all of his snaps there at Notre Dame at right tackle than any other position. So from that perspective, you could see them keeping him as an active guy on game day. He could be dressing. He could be, one of the backups on game day. I really don't know. I just know that where Hainsey makes progress is going to determine a lot of things. Because if Hainsey is basically like, we don't see him as a tackle at all after the preseason, but we see him as a center or guard on game days for sure. Okay, well then now Brad Seaton's chances of making the roster just went way up because you have you'd have Seaton and Wells as your tackles. You'd have Hainsey and Stinney as your backup inside guys, and maybe Hainsey's killing it at center. You feel great about him being active on game days as your backup snapper. Obviously Marpet could do that too if you needed him to, but nice to have a guy that you can just plug right in without having to move around your whole O-line. So that's why Hainsey is kind of the pivot piece, no pun intended there with him playing center, but was kind of the pivot piece to this whole thing because if he looks great on the inside, might be bad news for Hutcherson. If he looks like he could play tackle in the NFL, might be bad news for Seaton. But I do think one of those two guys wins it. Molshin, yes, he's talented. Maybe he has a great camp. To me, I just think Hutcherson's nastier. He's more of a natural. He's physical. My big thing with Molshin is I just never saw a super physical guy. Like, I just think in the NFL, if you're not physical as a lineman, you really have to be like unbelievably technical. Like you have to be like a special technician. Like not that these guys aren't physical, but if you're not like a Mauler or like, you have to be like a kind of like a guy who wins like a Joe Thomas or a Whitworth. And those guys are physical for sure, but like they win with just unbelievable technique and positioning. And like, I don't know that either of these guys are going to get there. So I'd rather take the meaner, bigger, stronger guy that can catch somebody right and lay them out. Rather than the guy who's just going to kind of barely get by on every snap, like a Molshin, in my opinion. So that's my general thoughts on the O-line group. I think somebody said, what a crazy trip it is to have an O-line surplus when we had a ragtag lineup for all those years. Very true. And nice not to be starting a season with Caleb Beninoch in the lineup, huh?
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's like you said, it's essentially a domino effect with the whole Hainsey situation. I think it's important to note too, just, shout out to Donovan Smith, who has been close to an Iron Man in terms of playing left tackle, just holding that down. He's hardly ever missed a game or anything like that. And I remember he went through a brutal injury before training camp. I want to say it was either 2019 or 2018. He went through a tough injury and he was able to tough it out and, didn't miss any time from a lower leg injury, which was tough. Mm-hmm. And you look at Wirfs on the other side too, and he's a guy that's an athletic freak. He's only 1 year into his career, but he seems like a guy that will hold up pretty steady. So that might also interest the Bucs into not like you obviously have to be prepared if a guy gets hurt, and obviously that's why Wells is there and you could lock him in. Yeah. But that might put the Bucs in a situation where they're like, hey, you can't count on anything, but we got two studs at the tackle position that we're confident are going to be there for the long haul of the season. Let's beef up the interior offensive line in case we got a situation like that.
They've had more injuries there for sure.
And they do love the Maulers. Ryan Jensen is the leader of the Mauler group, I guess, if you want to say. Mauler mob probably sounds a little bit better.
There you go.
So
marketing.
Yeah, I think to the victors go the spoils, as they
That's
say.
right. Yeah. H. Andrew says, could you elaborate on why Hutcherson never got drafted, considering he seems to have a good skill set? It was interesting to me that he didn't get drafted, Ace. I wish I could tell you exactly why. I mean, really high character, of great repute at South Carolina. They talk very favorably about him. His speech during the season about, and not that I'm against any player opting out, that's what they felt like was the best call for them at all. But Hutcherson's speech why he personally didn't feel like opting out was the right decision for him was it was an inspiring little talk that he gave there to the media. I thought so. I think he's made of the right stuff that teams love for sure. Physical, he's athletic enough. I think it's maybe not his biggest strength, but technically, certainly there were some ugly reps here and there. But I was stunned reviewing his tape after the draft why he didn't get drafted. I really was. I thought he could be a spot starter and a solid backup for a long time. Those guys usually get drafted, especially in the O-line. So I feel good about him. The little we saw in minicamp, I mean, with what you can judge, I was impressed. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. There's a long way to go probably with him, to prove me right or wrong. But I'm very excited to watch him. He's probably the offensive lineman. He and Seaton, because I really haven't seen Seaton. I mean, is it crazy, Matt, to think Seaton could beat out Josh Wells? Is that crazy? Was Wells like always way ahead of him? I don't know. He wasn't there in the past. Did those guys compete?
I don't really remember them competing too much. It was essentially Wells was namely just the next guy up if anything were to go down with the offensive tackles. I don't really recall them having too much of a, it's either this guy or that guy when it comes down to it. I will say though, Seaton's from the Bronx, so I have a feeling, he's going to bring that nastiness.
He's gonna scrap at some point with somebody.
Well, Bruce Arians is big against no fights. He hates especially when the Bucs have like the joint training camp with the Titans this year. He doesn't like when guys try to show their machismo by like getting in it's essentially becomes a shoving match because no one really throws punches because then you're hitting a helmet and that's just idiotic. Right. Why would you punch a helmet?
Right. Josh wants to know how many O-linemen dress on game day. I think it's usually 8, Josh. I mean, depends on team and game, but I'm pretty sure it's usually 8. Usually one guy inactive. Maybe it could be 7, but I think usually 8. Who are the free agent O-linemen available? Mitch wants to know. I actually have no idea, Mitch. I don't know. I haven't looked.
Yeah, I haven't checked that in a bit. It's not really positioned at the Bucs.
Yeah,
have been this is who the Bucs need to get. In free agency, they're one piece away.
Right. Long Lost Glazer says, how about Alaric Jackson not getting drafted? Dude had 42 starts at Iowa along with Tristan Wirfs. Couldn't get a 7th round flyer. I watched Alaric Jackson on tape and then I watched him at the Senior Bowl and I was not super surprised that he didn't get drafted. Let's just put it that way. Thought he struggled a good bit there. You know what doesn't struggle a good bit? Spotify Green Room, and especially Pewter Report on Spotify Green Room. Spotify Green Room is changing the way we talk sports. It's the only place for live audio conversations about the takes, rumors, news, and teams you care about. React to sports news as it happens, gather all your friends and watch parties for the biggest games, rep your favorite teams, and find your community. Better Sports Talk is just a tap away. Download on the Apple App Store and join the conversation with Spotify Green Room tonight over on the Peter Report channel. Our own JC Allen, Paul Atwell, and Jack Barrett will all be on there talking some Bucs, I believe. Yeah, the newbies. They'll all be on there talking some Bucs. So, it'll be a good show with those guys tonight. I believe that's 8:30 p.m. Eastern is the time on that one. So get Spotify Green Room, follow Peter Report, jump into the conversation with those guys. They always have a ton of fun on there. Lots of good insight in there as well. So good stuff from them. All right, we got to go to the defensive line and the defensive side of the ball. Let's start outside of the edge defender position. The locks are Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Joe Tryon, who should be the number 3 guy. Yes, it's technically a competition with Anthony Nelson. I think Tryon would have to fall on his face not to get a lot of those reps even early on. So we'll see how that battle goes. Anthony Nelson will be trying to really kind of stave off. We'll be kind of trying to stave off Joe Tryon, but really for a roster spot, trying to stave off Cam Gill, who came on pretty decent last year. He impressed as a pass rusher, did some good things on special teams. Both he and Nelson were staples on special teams last year as the number 3 and 4 guys. One of them will get bumped off, probably off the roster, maybe even. Gill could go to the practice squad. Anthony Nelson would probably go in another direction, maybe. I don't know if he would go to a different team or what would happen with Anthony Nelson if he were released. But yeah, I think that could be a scenario where you're looking at a couple different options for those outside linebacker spots. And it's not crazy to say Anthony Nelson could be the guy out of luck when it's all said and done. I don't expect it, but Cam Gill he's impressed them. He had half a sack in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
He's done some nice things.
I really like Cam. I mean, obviously he's not Shaq or JPP or anything, but I like Cam Gill's game. I love his speed on the outside. And if you have speed, it can take you a long way in the NFL. I love how he gets to the outside. I believe he came from a small school, so he had a lot of development to come with that, and that takes some time. But he was important. He did some good things on special teams as well. He's a guy that seems like he's taking it. He's learning a lot since he's joined the league. Mm-hmm. I think there's room for Cam Gill to grow, and I think there's room for potential. I'm not saying he's going to beat out Anthony Nelson quite yet, but I think he's another guy where if he can at least make the practice squad and get a little more development under his belt, he could have a role for the Bucs. Whether it's just being an important special teams guy, and obviously, he's not going to be a gunner on the punt team or anything like that, but that doesn't mean you can't make an impact on special teams. I mean, look at the Pat O'Connor blocked punt. I think Bucs fans still remember that one from the Denver game. I just really enjoy his speed. I just remember seeing a ton of reps that he had last season in training camp thinking this guy has an opportunity, or he's at least making the most of his opportunities, and maybe he's not as athletically gifted as a Shaq or a JPP, like I just said. But this guy has a motor to him, and I think anyone that has a motor has a chance, and they're playing because they love the game. And I'm excited to see what he can do in this training camp.
Well, I wrote last year after the draft, remember, I said Cam Gill's going to make this roster. I don't think he made it right away, maybe, but if I'm recalling correctly, but he was active by week 3, and then he played in every game after that. He was a key special teamer because I think, on tape, it was obvious in college he had a little something to him. He's a good player. I think they can hang on to him on the practice squad if they need to. But here's the other scenario, Matt. I think they can keep 5 outside linebackers. In fact, I think they're more likely to keep 5 active outside linebackers than they are to keep 5 off-ball linebackers. I really believe that. I think they might look at this, and I know we're not talking linebacker today. They might look at a situation where they say, we want Cam Gill and Anthony Nelson active for special teams. And we know we don't have to have – so we're only going to make 3 linebackers active, off-ball guys. And, if we need push comes to shove, we make Jordan Whitehead a linebacker. If we lose 2 guys in the game, we make Jordan Whitehead a linebacker, or maybe we teach Cam Gill some off-ball stuff, or maybe we play, big nickel the rest of the way or something like that. But that might be how they look at it to get Gill and Nelson both out there on special teams, give themselves some more defensive line versatility maybe with those guys. But, I think that is might be the key to this whole thing is how many of those guys they're able to keep. And it could be 5. Maybe one's inactive on game days on occasion, but I think it could be 5 that they end up keeping in order to keep Gill away from another potential team. Do I think Gill gets vultured from the squad on practice squad? Probably not, but the Bucs may want him up and they may want him active, and then maybe he's the 4th guy on game days.
Yeah, I think Anthony Nelson, too, would be a guy if they're like, hey, we're going to cut him or somehow try to stash him on the practice squad. I feel like Nelson would be more inclined to get signed by another team, maybe because he's more well-known, maybe because he went to a school like Iowa and people have seen him do some things. I mean, the Bucs are, everyone says, oh, we're going to keep like the best players on the best 55 players available. And, sometimes that's BS and it's hyperbole. Contracts come into play and you can't do it. But I believe the Bucs coaching staff when they actually say, hey, we're going to take the best players available. Yeah. We know Todd Bowles loves versatility, more so at the safety position, but any player that he can do different things with is certainly a guy that he would like to implement something for them in the defense. And even if that means Cam Gill, moving him around, or like you said, moving Whitehead up, there's a lot of creative things you could do with this Bucs defense. And I think they're going to be firing on all cylinders this year, just from the continuity of playing together. And I think they're going to even be better than they were last season, especially up front.
Very possible that they could be, and hopefully the addition of Joe Tryon does that. Right now, we don't have much to talk about with him on this show, but he will probably be the player we talk about more than any other, hopefully, over the next month, because it's going to be all eyes on him. He and Jalen Darden are probably the rookies that have the path to being able to really help this team this year. Yep. There are hardly any new additions to this team at all, so there really aren't that many new people to talk about. So we will probably talk about those guys up and down those days to try and get a feel for what they bring to the table and how much they're going to be able to make an impact this season. Mitch wants to know, will Mr. Irrelevant make the team? Tune in to tomorrow's podcast, Mitch. We'll talk about linebackers, safeties, and corners, and we'll preview those positions in lieu of training camp. So make sure you can you check in on that. Bucs Time 12 wants to know, can Cam Gill stop the run? That's what we don't know. We haven't seen enough reps of Cam Gill trying to stop the run yet at the NFL level to know and have a really good insight into what he is in that part of his game. Paul wants to know if we can shed some light on our process of evaluating linemen. Yes, but do you mean offensive or defensive linemen? That would help clear things up. But I can provide an answer to that for sure if I know which side of the ball. Bucs Time 12 wants to know, why don't people see how thin the D-line is after the starters? I cannot understand why we have so much depth on offense and so little on defense. I don't know if Bucs Time 12 is talking about interior guys or outside guys. I don't think the Bucs would be, I would say that they're thin on the outside at least, and we'll talk about inside guys in a second. But the outside, I mean, having a first-round rookie as your number 3 guy seems pretty good to me. And Nelson's not a great player, and there's no ceiling for him to be a starter. But as a 4th guy, I feel fine with Nelson. He gets slandered because he's not a pass rusher. But Nelson can hold the line. Like, if you need somebody to, like, come in and play a game, he's not going to mess up, I don't think. Like, he's a good runner.
Makes little impacts here and there. He doesn't, he doesn't like jump off sides and things like that. He's
got like 94-foot
guy. He's able to, knock passes down. He's solid in the run too. So he's a capable player. He's not
right. There's awful. Just no ceiling. That's why it was always like, you got to find the next guy, because if he ever has to be the number 2, you're in trouble. Like, you don't have the impact you get from somebody else. That's why it was not last year. It was like, white knuckling it to hope that Peter Paul and Beshak.
You look around the entire league. How many teams have, your 4th string edge rusher is, he would be a starter on most other teams. Like, no, that's just not the case. Let's look at it realistically,
I think the Bucs tried to get as deep as they could on defense this offseason, realistically, knowing that their cap is spent toward the best group of 22 starters in the league. That okay, what can we do so they got a guy like Joe Jones late in the process to play linebacker and fortify that 4th spot. They drafted 2 guys, obviously, but then same thing with the edge defender, taking a 1st-round pick on Joe Tryon. Okay, good. Now we feel like 4 and 5 and Gill and Nelson are in better spots to fit who they are. And, bringing back Ross Cockrell for cheap, that was huge, to give themselves a viable 4th corner. I think the 4th corner is one of the best, most important depth spots in the league. And now you have a guy who's started most of his career somewhere, been a key contributor most of his career somewhere. So I think they prioritized it and they saw the defense was thinner. And so they got those guys. Now, there's not ballers like there is a wide receiver all the way down. You're not going to have that at every position group. You got to, wide receiver and tight end are unique on this team. All those guys are in unique scenarios. Cam Brady took a pay cut. Gronk came back out of retirement. It's kind of unique situations with those guys. They had the leverage with Gronk. So, I think it's a little bit different when some of those situations, you can't do that at every spot. Long Lost Glazer wants to know about the special teams battle coming up at linebacker. Yeah, we'll touch more on this tomorrow. Minter, Britt, Stewart, Tryon, Nelson, Gill, sort of. I mean, Tryon's going to be active, so it's really Nelson, Gill there. And
Bruce Arians spoke about him playing special teams, and they said he's got the genetic ability and all the height, weight, everything to play special teams. Obviously, it's not the end goal for him 2 and 3 seasons from now, but for this season, yeah, he can contribute there for sure. Yeah. And he had been doing it in minicamp as well once he was ready to go.
Big Earn wants to know, can we get a shout out to Alyssa Lang for extending her contract and keeping that Stammer doppelganger out of Florida indefinitely? A little shout out to Alyssa Lang.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Congrats to Alyssa. That was awesome to see today.
Very well deserved, man. She is a game changer on that network for sure. She does an outstanding job. And she's doing the Lord's work by keeping Trevor and the disaster is losing, and the disaster that
Tampa just keeps racking up the time
out of Florida. So that's what we got. That's what we got to do. Hey, you know who else keeps you safe and sound in the face of disaster, Matt? It's Briar Greaves. Just like Alyssa Lang, they keep us safe in those situations, and they make sure that we've got the insurance that we need, whether it's life, homeowners, auto, or even commercial insurance. Briar and Sam Greaves and their staff are the best in the area and big Bucs fans. It will literally take you 10 minutes to get a quote to compare your current policy, and that 10 minutes could turn into hundreds of dollars in savings. Don't wait. Call Briar Greaves today at 813-876-4166 and find out how much money you can put back in your pocket. 30 years in business and Bucs season ticket holders. Call Briar or Sam today. That's 813-876-4166. Man, if they can save you money, give them a call. Give this thing a shot. Big Bucs fans. Can't go wrong with them.
No, you can't.
Don't lose anything by giving them a call. So go ahead and do that. BriarGreavesInsurance.com. So, okay, we got to talk about our O-line, D-line, and how we evaluate this. Paul was asking, I'm just looking at, did his man beat him, and did he beat his man, plug the gap? Not too sophisticated. So, yes, not too sophisticated, but also we can do a whole pod on this. So I'll just say a couple of things really quickly. Defensively, especially if we're talking edge rushers, the most important things I'm looking for are what I call the 4 pillars of pass rush athleticism. Burst off the ball, the first step quickness, that's all under the same umbrella. Speed up the arc. Can you maintain the first step? Do you just get off the ball quickly, or do you have legit speed to get up the arc? Can you keep that speed up for the next 3 or 4 steps, basically? The ability to bend or turn the corner. It could be ankle flexibility, could be hip flexibility, but the ability to dip and turn without losing speed. You don't have to be Von Miller, but can you dip and turn a little bit without losing speed or slowing down or getting pushed up the arc by a guy, even if you've beat the guy out of his stance? And the last one I look at is change of direction. If you have those and the ability to kind of cross a guy's face or jab step him and get outside of him, if you have those 4 things, I think you're a stud as a pass rusher. Yes, your hands matter, but all that stuff can be developed and fixed. Myles Garrett didn't have great hands coming out, but he had all 4 of those things at an elite level. So, yeah, people are like, oh, he doesn't use his hands like Derek Barnett does. There were people like, oh, Derek Barnett's better. No, he's not. Derek Barnett's just a mediocre athlete. Those guys get exposed in the NFL. Athleticism is the most important thing for edge pass rushers. Does a guy occasionally overcome it? Occasionally. Yeah. Very rare. I
think it's important too, just to add on top of that too, I like seeing guys that try a different arsenal of moves and not just rely on the bull rush. I hate pass rushers that just rely on that, because eventually you're going to run into someone that's just as strong as you are and you can't beat them. I think Shaq is the perfect example, and he had the benefit of playing behind guys like Von Miller, where he was able to learn so many different, swim moves or cuts and rips and everything like that. And that really helped his game extremely, is that, yeah, he could hit you with the spin move, then he'll also rip inside and get after the quarterback too. I think that's important to develop your game more, where the guy might just be as good as you, and you're going to need something a little bit different just to get over the edge, and that might be it.
Hard to be elite without elite athleticism, but you can still bust with elite athleticism. It doesn't mean you're necessarily good. It just means you have a better chance of being good than somebody who doesn't have elite athleticism. It's one of the positions where athleticism, especially testing athleticism, matters the most, I think. I'm not just talking about 40s either. Jadeveon Clowney's kind of a prime example of what I mean when I talk about pass rush athleticism. Mm-hmm. He is a freak athlete. His pass rush athleticism is just kind of average. His best trait is his explosiveness out of his stance. He maintains the speed pretty well, but he can't bend. And so that's always been the thing that's limited Jadeveon Clowney as a pass rusher. Everybody freaked out when he ran his 40, and I get it. It was awesome. It was important to a degree, But when your 3 cones average, in your short shuttles average, you don't change direction that great. You don't bend or turn corners that great. At some positions, it might not matter. At edge rusher, it just really matters. So he's had a lot of success when they've moved him around, put him inside, let him rush on a linear path, to the quarterback. He's had success there. But when he's on the edge and he rushes a lot, it's been limited. He's got to win with his hands. He's got to win with speed to power. And like you said, eventually guys usually solve that, and you need other moves. And he's never really developed fully as a pass rusher because of that. Most of his wins are just freak wins. That's what they are,
And on top of that, real quick, I remember you writing right after the draft a story or two about how Tryon, a big thing with him was his first step and how he maintain that same speed after the initial first step. I remember you writing about that. So that'll be another thing to see if he can continue doing that for training camp this summer. Right.
That's a good point. I think, the ability to, some guys can get out of their stance quickly. Some guys can't tell because their technique's off, right? They step backward a little bit and then come forward. We call it false stepping, or they step to the side. Some guys aren't really balanced in a 2-point stance. They like to do like this before the snap. And so then they're kind of off balance, or they're rocking back when the ball's snapped. And, no, the most guys will just teach you, keep lean forward and then get ready to spring and then spring, but in college, a lot of these guys are rocking all over the place, and their first step just doesn't develop because they aren't secure in their stance yet. They don't have that technique down. And so I am excited to kind of see whether Tryon's fixed that part of his game. I think for sure. And offensive line wise, I'll just say real quick, I think that getting out of your stance is really important for pass protection. Some guys just don't get out of their stance very quickly. It's important for pass protection. It's important for run blocking. So explosiveness is big, and then hand usage is just critical. That we could dovetail into all kinds of conversations about hand usage, and we will at some point, I'm sure. But I would say those things I think are just really, really huge, and all of it needs to be physical. There aren't many guys that can without.
That's like an all-encompassing answer for both sides of the line.
Right, I think so too.
What works with the offensive line too. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. Long Lost Glazer wants to know, is Pat O'Connor a lock to make the roster as DT5, DT6 due to his special teams prowess? Only 7 less special team snaps than Ryan Smith for most of the team. What do you think about this? You've watched Pat longer than I have and kind of know how the team feels about him. It feels like to me, I don't want to say he's a lock, but I think he's probably a better chance than people think, right?
I don't think it's fair to say a lock for a guy that's just going to be a special teams role that isn't a gunner situation, and he's a backup defensive lineman. But he is a guy that slips through the cracks in situations where he's a likable guy. The teammates love him, and that's not the only reason why you would keep someone. But he's shown that he's another guy that puts in all the effort. You have to be an effort guy if you're playing on special teams. I think he has a solid opportunity to make the team because of what he's able to do in his role. You don't have to worry about him in terms of making a mistake out there. He goes and gets some tackles. I said the punt block before. So he's definitely active in special team situations. And let's face it, it's quite difficult for a defensive lineman to really get noticed on a special teams play. And Pat O'Connor, one way or another, has been able to do that. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to make this year's team, but if they're just looking at from a special teams point, and all the coaches have talked about how big special teams is going to be this year, I would bet on him making the team, but I don't think it's fair to say it's a lock.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's a lock, but right now you've got, who do you have their locks? And I know some people already asked about him. You have Vita Vea, Ndamukong Suh, Will Golston, Raheem Nunez-Roches, and Steve McLendon is a lock, JC Allen. What is this guy writing about? Who hired
I saw
this?
that and I kind of chuckled a little bit.
I told him yesterday, I was like, hope you're tuned into the podcast because Matt and I are going to bash you, and he didn't even know what about. Now I'm springing it on him. Steve McLendon's making the roster, brah. This guy came in from the Jets and balled out as a run defender last year, picked up great snaps. His age, though, he doesn't miss any games due to injury. He's in unbelievable shape. He's going to be like a trainer or something when he's done, run his own performance plays. He's got all the answers and physical stuff. He's ready to go. He and McLendon, he and Suh are the oldest defensive tackles in the league, but he's only going to have to play a handful of snaps. There's plenty of guys in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really play more than 30 snaps a game, 30% of snaps a game when he came to the Bucs.
Right.
But his job coming to the team, and the job that he executed very well was he's a run stopper. And what's the key to this Bucs defense, especially the defensive line? Before anything else, they say they want to stop the run so they could put teams in 3rd and long situations and then let Shaq and JPP and hopefully Joe Tryon do their thing. You're asking him to stop the run, all right? Yeah. Don't expect McLendon to get many sacks or anything like that. You can't really expect that too much for most of this defensive line, though. Sue had 6 sacks and Golston had 3.5, and Vita Vea even had 2 in a very short amount of time. I'm really excited to see if Vita Vea continues his upward trend as a pass rusher.
Yeah, that's huge.
To get back to the point, McLendon is going to make this team. He's going to be important with stopping the run, and it's going to be important to take some reps so you can give Ndamukong Suh a breather or Vita Vea a breather. We know how much Sue played last season after Vita Vea went down. I think it's going to be super beneficial now having everyone healthy. Like we said, Sue's an older guy. He doesn't need to play every single snap, but he'll be there for all the key important moments.
Right. And so I think McLendon is a lock too. So that's 5.
Yeah.
That leaves you with 1, maybe 2 spots, which you were thinking about. Jeremiah Ledbetter, I think he's probably the long shot. I know Benning, Pochwaye, and Kobe
Elijah
Smith. Elijah Ponder's moving to the edge now, I guess. We didn't even mention him. Sorry, Elijah. He was playing on the edge.
Is another guy.
Kobe Davis. I said Kobe Smith. Kobe Davis. And then I don't think those guys have a chance. I think it's Ledbetter maybe, but I think it's for 6, it's probably O'Connor and Khalil Davis, right? I'm not forgetting anybody. I think it's those 2.
Yeah, that's pretty much everyone. I will say, I thought over the past couple years, Jeremiah Ledbetter has had really good training camps, but he keeps getting hurt at the end of them. And then obviously at that point, when you're already injured, you're not going to make the team that way. If Ledbetter could stay healthy for a whole training camp, I think he's a really interesting guy. He's pretty mobile, I'd say, for a defensive lineman. Obviously, he's not like a great pass rusher, but I think he has the ability to make some important plays that you maybe wouldn't see from other guys. I think if he could stay healthy, he's quite possibly an option. Yeah. Khalil Davis, I thought he did a good job of stopping the run in training camp and in small amounts of times that he actually played last season. I'd like to see how much his game can improve this year. I saw a couple things during mandatory minicamp and things like that, but granted, it's the underwear Olympics, as coaches like to call it, so I'm not putting too much stock into that. I do think it's a 3-man race, though, because if Ledbetter can play special teams, that obviously pushes the envelope for a guy like Pat O'Connor that we talked about before. Maybe they would decide to go with Ledbetter over O'Connor. These are things that we got to really look into. Right. I think it's a 3-man race for that last spot, and it'll be fun.
The other thing is O'Connor, not that he isn't good on special teams. He's a really good guard on the punt team. He blocked. He's a very good blocker. He's just he's not a great coverage guy. I mean, he does what he can, but you are talking about somebody you do not see many, D-end / kind of. I mean, he could slide inside. He can play 4-eye. He can play over a tackle. He's kind of like a mini D tackle. You don't see many guys like that on special teams. He's a rare type, it means there's limitations in coverage because he's not an athletic freak. So, kickoff return or kickoff team, he was on that all year. I don't know. Do you want to run that back? Because what I saw, not that you have to defend many kick returns in today's NFL, but yikes, it wasn't necessarily great. Not like he has an assignment sound. It's just hard to move in that much open space when you're the biggest dude on the field, the slowest guy out there, So yes, Pat O'Connor has done a decent amount on special teams, but I don't know that I would say he's so valuable in that role that he couldn't be. The options couldn't be plentiful elsewhere too, especially if Khalil Davis. Here's the big thing: if Khalil Davis balls as a pass rusher, it should be the end of the story.
Right.
He's the 6th guy because you don't have any pass rush juice, and this may go back to whoever was asking about depth. You have run stuffers. If somebody gets hurt, Rakeem and McLendon, they're going to hold the line against the run. Even Golston, Sue, all these guys will. But I don't know about pass rush. That's where the question comes. To me, Sue is probably declining in that way. McLendon, Rakeem Nunez-Roches have never offered much in that regard. Golston's kind of experienced a little bump under Todd Bowles. He's getting better, but he's not really a dominant force in that way. So you've kind of got a committee approach, and it's fine if you've got your edge guys doing work and JPP can play over the guard on occasion. And there's ways around it. It's not the end of the world. But if you've got a young guy flashing pass rush ability, all right, well, we got to figure out how to get this guy active on game days because that could be an impact guy for you. So I think it's a huge offseason for Khalil Davis. Yeah, this year he might have a small role, but McLendon, Sue, Rakeem Nunes-Roches is 2 years, I think, on his contract, but McLendon, Sue, Golston, all free agents. Decent chance McLendon and Sue retire after this season.
Yeah.
Hard to see all those guys coming back. I thought he was
going to retire after this season.
Right. They have like no youthful upside energy guys on the D-line. The only one that could even possibly be that guy, other than obviously Vea, is a backup, is Khalil Davis. That he could go from a kind of like we've talked about with Jalen Darden or Tyler Johnson. They could go from like fringe roster guys who are not even active for every single game of the season to like key pieces next year because the guys that they lose, they need to be ready to step into those roles. So a lot of eyes on Khalil Davis, man. I can't wait to see what he brings to the table because he could be an important player down the road.
Absolutely. He almost like we were talking about with Hainsey on the offensive side. Davis could be another domino effect type of guy where if he, like you said, balls out, has a great training camp, he could definitely jump over Nacho and take a lot of Nacho's playing time. And Nacho is the ultimate energy guy where he hypes up everyone else. But again, you have Devin White on defense. He'll hype up everyone up.
Right, for sure. You got plenty of hype there.
Davis is one of those guys that he is.
He got a lot of praise in minicamp or in training camp last year.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he's got arguably not the most to prove, but he's a guy that could really, really help his stock with a big time training camp.
Right. There's a lot to it for sure, but he's one of those guys that everybody should have their eye on, I think, because low key he's kind of important because his team needs to find defensive tackle help in youth in a big way. If he can't produce, they are going to have a lot of questions next year. I mean, you could be looking at a group but doesn't have many guys that can even play depending on what happens. Nope. So he's an interesting player for this offseason. Okay, so we've covered the defensive line in depth. We've covered the offensive line in depth. Tomorrow, safeties, corners, linebackers. We talk about all of it. There's depth battles at all these spots. Safety 4 is very interesting to me. There is some quality options there. I did not see that being the case when Andrew Adams went out the door to Philadelphia, but we got some quality options there. CB5 is going to be a big battle spot. Could they keep 6 corners? Linebacker 4 is going to be a big one. Do they keep 5 linebackers? I'll tell you tomorrow why I don't think that's the case. Scott Reynolds will be on with me on tomorrow's show. Going to be a lot of fun here on the Pewter Report podcast. So, as always, we appreciate y'all. We're 5 days out from training camp. To keep it locked right here on the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Football's almost back, and it's a tremendous feeling.